I've been away doing a lot of stuff, and I really haven't had the time or energy to really sit back and focus on making a video or even role playing itself. I spent years using a lot of energy for role play fighting, videos, writing, talking to people, etc. But I haven't done the same thing when it came to my religion. And I was convicted. I said, how can I say I truly love God when all of my time and energy is going into roleplay fighting? So I've decided to slow down a bit with the roleplay fighting stuff to focus on making content and videos about Jesus, the Bible, Christianity, and other related topics. In doing so, I've been realizing a lot about myself and my perspective on life. The majority of things circled around me wanting to be accepted, wanting to be validated for my work, and just overall trying to be, a people pleaser or to please people. In the midst of that, I realized I cared about benefiting myself more and receiving all the glory due. Now, I won't go into detail, but I was treating people like chess, or like a chess piece to my own game. And I really feel bad about that because I ruined potential relationships that I could have had with people. All the enemies that I made over roleplay fighting could have been great friends. And the friends that I've earned could have been more than that. They could have been family. They could have been part of the team. After about 25 years of roleplay fighting, I wish I could have done things better. But the knowledge I received from good times and the bad times is something I do not regret. I've learned a lot, so much about my personal life and who I am as a person, as a friend, as a husband, as a father, and as a man. And I want to share all of my knowledge and experiences to the rest of the roleplay fighting community and to the world. Because this is a roleplay fighting channel, I try not to deviate from that and talk about, my personal life or other things that's not related to the topic. But sometime in the future, I will share how my life has changed dramatically, and I'm hoping that the content in this video will prove that and encourage others to follow along. So with all that, I've come to realize that I am not the only one with an opinion or with a significant voice. Sure, on paper, it sounds obvious, like, duh, of course you're not the only one with an opinion. But in practical terms, a lot of people think that they are the most important people in the world. And that can cause people to think narrowly or have a narrow-minded, or worse, selfishly. I started to lower my guard with the idea that my version of roleplay fighting isn't the best. Sure, I may think that and can give a lot of reasons and explanations on why, but others don't think so. And with this new realization, I said, hold up. I know my opinion isn't the only one that matters. Let me see what others have to say. And because of that, I started to grow more in tune with just listening and appreciating what people had to say. With roleplay fighting being the forefront of my questions and wanting to improve my perspective and skill on roleplay fighting, I asked people, what do you think of roleplay fighting? And why do you fight the way you fight? And what do you think is wrong with virtual warfare? And why do you call it roleplay fighting and not anything else? I've been asking question after question after question. Like, how do you feel about this way? And what will you improve in this area? And just questions that would, sure, benefit me in the long run, but also show people that they are valued and their opinion does matter and their voice is significant. So with all that, now I'm really just interested in listening more than I am in sharing. asking questions more than I am giving answers. And it has been really, really rewarding and fulfilling at the same time. So now I'm interested in hearing people's thoughts about the content in this video. Now, I've heard of these different terms before and know that there are slight differences, but I had never really considered them to be important to me or worth investigating. But just asking questions about roleplay fighting and others people's perspective, I've learned a lot about the true nature, quote unquote, true nature of roleplay fighting. I enjoy history and determining the historicity of things, mainly the Bible, Jesus, and other related religions. So before I get into the reason for making this video, let me go over some of the historicity of roleplay fighting. Now, looking back as far as I can, roleplay fighting was probably called roleplay fighting. I mean, no one would truly know. But the name T1 has been associated with roleplay fighting ever since it became text-based. This is because before the roleplay fighting as we know it, where people take turns writing out their responses, there was a style where essentially the faster you type out a series of designated responses, the higher chance you have of winning. It may sound silly now, and I won't go into detail about the actual rules and mechanics, but just know that this type of style existed for the sake of this video. So, T1 was dubbed turn-based fighting, and T2 was dubbed speed typing. These are not the actual names they went by, but when T1 and T2 was mentioned, these were the type of gameplays that were expected. Where the term T came from, I have no idea. If any one of you know, please do so in comment below. But the earliest sources I can find mentions T as tiers. With that being said, the official and most documented form of the roleplay fighting we know as was called T1. So because of that, I will be calling it T1 fighting when mentioning the art, and you will see why shortly. So, doing more research about this matter, I've looked up different rules from different eras on different styles. As you can see, each rule set calls T1 fighting something different. Either text-based combat, or turn-based, or what we use today, role-play fighting, or RPF. Throughout the years, fighting different people in different communities, it was already apparent that people fought differently, with different styles and different names. But none of this level of interest was important to me, because I was too busy focusing on my agenda to share what I thought roleplay fighting was. Though blindly ambitious, it was necessary at the time. Now, instead of listening to reply, I'm listening to respond, and considering the feedback from others more significant than what I think I have to offer. So, with this change in my life and wanting to hear what people have to say, I realized something. That roleplay fighting, or T1 fighting, has various expectations. But these expectations are expected by a certain community that gives T1 fighting a particular name. So, noticing this, I started to ask more and more people, asking different corners of the internet what they think of T1 fighting. I asked people, have you ever heard of roleplay fighting? And when I said roleplay fighting, they said, what the heck is that? And when I mentioned T1 fighting to the same, they gave me the same response. And when I heard what they called roleplay fighting or T1 fighting, they told me what they expected players to do. In the midst of doing so, I asked them what not to do, and they gave me their responses. With that, I categorized conclusions based on the information they gave. And with that, I traveled to a different community who called this something else with different expectations and categorized that information. Then I made groups in what each style expected, and I matched up the things the other communities said what not to do, or is frowned upon or taken advantage of, and correlated each group with the idea respectively. For example, if one community says they stay away from being extremely precise and adding numerical implications, and the other emphasizes heavily on doing that, then that attribute will be associated with that particular group. And also, if a community may not emphasize on adding dialogue to a fight, they may not reject it, but doing so would give their opponent an advantage, whereas another community may urge writers to make engaging dialogue. So that characteristic would be attributed to that style of T1 that welcomes it. I did this over and over and over in various communities. Not only that, but also looking up every rule set I can find for text-based combat and doing the same thing. Some rules may encourage you to do something that other rules may encourage to take advantage of. And some rule sets may say do something that other rule sets clearly says not to do. With all that information from different people, rules, experiences, historical sources, etc., I've come to a conclusion that there are 3, thus far, main T1 fighting styles on the surface of text-based combat, or what I have been calling textual arts. So, there is roleplay fighting, that's us, or the people who rock with virtual warfare, combat roleplay, and text-based logic. So here's a summary of the 3 main styles therein. RPF, or roleplay fighting. Roleplay fighting is a style of text-based combat that emphasizes competitive gameplay and precise descriptions. In roleplay fighting, participants strive to win by any means within the established rules, focusing on exploiting opponents' mistakes and showcasing strategic thinking. The style places less emphasis on collaborative storytelling and character development compared to other forms of combat. Roleplay fighting prioritizes accuracy of information, scientific reasoning, and precise measurements of character movements and abilities. It is a more competitive and precise style of text-based combat that aims for victory through strategic decision-making and adhering to established rules. CRP, or combat role-playing. Combat roleplay is a style of text-based combat that emphasizes collaborative storytelling and character development. In combat roleplay, participants engage in combat encounters while focusing on creating an immersive narrative and exploring their characters' actions, thoughts, dialogue, and intentions. The style encourages players to craft detailed narratives and develop their characters within the context of combat. While maintaining basic rules for fair play, combat roleplay allows more flexibility in describing character abilities and focuses less on precise mechanics. Participants are encouraged to work together, weave a cohesive story, and ensure a fair and engaging combat experience while prioritizing character development and narrative elements. TBL, or turn-based logic. Turn-based logic is a style in T1 text-based combat involving engaging in strategic combat scenarios using a turn-based system. Participants take turns to perform actions, emphasizing strategic decision-making similar to tabletop role-playing games. It follows an action-by-action gameplay, and resource management plays a crucial role as participants carefully manage their characters' abilities and limited resources across turns. Turn-based logic offers a methodical and structured approach to combat encounters, allowing participants to make calculated moves for gaining advantages over opponents. As you can see, though each style shares certain similarities, the similarities are able to be categorized into different groups. The idea of using this form of categorization of different forms of T1 fighting can be used to help not only effectively introduce new ways of T1 fighting, but also build a criteria of expectancy to avoid many arguments that stem from different perspectives about different styles clashing with one another. I was watching two people fight in an RM match, or a realistic melee match, using kendo for their theme. Opponent 1 said that they swung the kendo stick in a vertical downward slash, using a leg exertion to keep full control of the blade. Opponent 2, however, then dictated the outcome of the opponent's one swing, counteracting with actions that implemented that dictation. Opponent 2 argued that because the traditional technique of a kendo swing would cause the mechanics of a person's body to lean slightly forward, they were able to make that assertion about opponent 1 in order to create a counteraction proportional to their outcome, even though opponent 1 implemented physiological elements to avoid that from happening, such as wrist control, exertion control, etc. Now, some of you are probably like, opponent 2 can't do that. That's character control. He can't just dictate his actions like that. And you will be right. But only looking at it through the characteristics categorized as roleplay fighting. However, when looking at it through a combat roleplay lens, where emphasizing story and theme is heavily encouraged, because it is a realistic melee match, tradition, culture, and technique will take a front seat when determining characters' behaviors and actions. So, because of these two expectations, players perceive T1 fighting differently. Many people believe that their way of T1 fighting is either the best way or the most correct way, when in reality, it's just a different way. If people want to be extremely competitive, role-playing fighting would be the way to go. Want to create a storyline through the art of fighting? CRP is the way to go. If players want to engage in a more game-like structure like Final Fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons, turn-based logic would be the way to go. There is no best way or correct way to T1 fighting, but there is a best way or correct way to do so when it comes to fighting under that respective category. I used to think roleplay fighting was the best way to go, the most fairest and challenging way of fighting, because it took absolute precision, technique, sciences, and logical reasoning in a way that everyone could not do. But there are also fairness and challenging things about combat roleplay. Players may not be trying to outdo their opponent, but finding new ways to challenge themselves in explaining a plot, engaging the audience, and developing a character through that fight scene is something that would challenge any seasoned roleplay fighting participant. There are competitiveness and challenges in all forms of T1 fighting. It's just simply up to the player in regards to what they want to be challenged in. T1 fighting is all about pushing limits in all areas of writing, whether it is self-improvement or winning over the audience. And that's pretty much the end of this video. Now, I will be continuing roleplay fighting content on the Virtual Warfare channel, but if anyone is interested in this new perspective that I have about the T1 fighting art in general, the link to the channel will be in the description below. You can subscribe to the channel. I would just be uploading anything and everything T1 related, whether it's combat roleplay, turn-based logic, roleplay fighting, rule sets, different little projects that I wanted to do on Virtual Warfare, but I see it more fitting to do it on this new channel. So I'll be doing everything on that channel, but the series, the training series will still continue. Rule sets reviews may still continue. Podcasts will still continue on Virtual Warfare. So anything that's roleplay fighting related will be on Virtual Warfare, and everything else will be on Textual Arts. Looking forward to seeing everyone on that side of YouTube. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see everybody in the future. Deuces.